Welcome to Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak, presented by Aura. My name is Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me here for the latest episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, make sure you like and comment on the video and subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. A lot to get to in this episode of Inside the Mavs as the Mavericks crushed the Chicago Bulls 127-92, a 35-point beatdown in Chicago to complete their two-game road trip at 2-0 after an 18-point win against the Detroit Pistons. They back it up and take care of business on the road against the Chicago Bulls to move to 37-28 on the season, and now 18-13 away from the American Airlines Center. Got tremendous contributions, especially from Daniel Gafford and Dereck Lively II, who combined to go 20 of 21 from the field for a combined 42 points in the win. Luka Doncic with an absolutely spectacular triple-double with the 27 points, 14 assists, and 12 rebounds that he had, as he had, of course, his streak of 5 consecutive 35-point triple-doubles snapped and his 6th consecutive 30-point triple-double streak snap, but at the same time, he gets his 7th consecutive overall triple-double, saying triple-double a lot, and you have to do that when you're talking about Luka Doncic. They got the win, which is the most important thing as they get ready to come home to take on the Golden State Warriors on Wednesday, most likely without Stephen Curry as he continues to deal with an ankle injury. And for the Mavericks, they need every win that they can get. Right now, they still remain in 8th in the Western Conference as they are behind the Sacramento Kings, who still sit in 7th, the Phoenix Suns, who are there in 6th. You've got the Lakers in 9th and the Warriors in the 10th spot, rounding out spots 7 through 10. But with 17 games to go, the Mavericks reclaiming some of that momentum that they lost when they lost 5 of 6 games. Of course, previous to that, having won 7 straight games, but then losing 5 of 6, then they're able to get 3 wins in a row, taking care of business against the Miami Heat, then beating the Detroit Pistons, and now beating the Chicago Bulls in a matchup of the Western and Eastern Conference Players of the Week. Luka Doncic winning the award for the West, and DeMar DeRozan having won the Eastern Conference Player of the Week award for the Chicago Bulls. The Mavericks did a terrific job defensively against both DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic in this game. The Mavericks were absolutely spectacular, as you saw history being made by Daniel Gafford, who in this game made his 23rd consecutive field goal, which was an NBA record. More on that a little bit later on in the show, as the bigs of the Mavericks really dominated in this game against the Chicago Bulls. The Mavericks crushing the Bulls in that first quarter, 44-16, as they shot 64% overall from the field, nearly 55% from 3. It was capped off by a Josh Green three-pointer in the left corner at the buzzer to give them 44 points. The Mavericks used a 23-4 run to close the final 5 minutes and 10 seconds of that first quarter, and it was really all over from there, as they were really able to get out in transition, dominated in the paint when it came to Daniel Gafford and, of course, Dereck Lively II, and they were really able to put the pedal to the metal against a Chicago Bulls team that likes to slow things down. They don't play with a lot of pace, but they also don't have a lot of interior presence to be able to defend guys who can be able to finish at the rim and in the paint. And Daniel Gafford and Dereck Lively did that time and time again throughout the course of the game. And that was one thing that I really appreciated about what the Mavericks did in terms of their approach. You think about what Chicago was facing. Yes, they came into that game against the Mavericks, finishing their West Coast road trip and 3-1. They had lost in their final game to the Los Angeles Clippers, but the Mavericks knew if they brought the energy and the focus early on and really pushed the pace against the Chicago Bulls, they may be able to speed them up and get them into a game where they're trying to keep up with them, getting up and down the floor. And you saw time and time again in that game against Chicago, the Mavericks simply pushing the pace and Chicago not being able to keep up throughout the course of 48 minutes, getting out in transition, whether it be Dereck Lively out on the fast break, Daniel Gafford finishing in transition, the Mavericks made a concerted effort to make sure that they were playing at their tempo and dictating the pace that they wanted to set against the Chicago Bulls, and it worked out beautifully throughout the course of the game. And really, Luka Doncic being able to get his guys involved early on, especially in that first half, finding Gafford, finding Lively to really be able to put the Chicago Bulls in a bind in terms of defending their big men in the middle throughout the course of the game. More on this throughout the course of the show, but let's take a quick break here on Inside the Mavs and hear from today's sponsor of our podcast and our video, and that being Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs. Appreciate you hanging out with me through that quick break there. And thank you to our sponsor of today's podcast and our video, and that being Aura. We were talking about how the Mavericks bigs dominated in the middle. Just to give you a little bit more perspective on that historic first quarter that the Mavericks had. Mavericks outscoring the Bulls 44-16 in that first quarter, marked the highest point differential in any opening quarter this season, and the second highest point differential in any quarter this year, as, of course, the Mavericks had a 47-18 second quarter against the Los Angeles Clippers back on November the 10th, earlier on this season. So it just gives you an idea of what the Mavericks were able to do in dominating that first quarter. As I mentioned, closing that first quarter in the final 5 minutes and 10 seconds with a 23-4 run. Luka Doncic stuffing the stat sheet, 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists. Dereck Lively II had 10 points in that first quarter. Dereck Lively II was spectacular, running the floor, finishing in the fast break. And one of my biggest observations of this game, and we've talked about it, as now the Dallas Mavericks are now 5-0 when Daniel Gafford is in the starting lineup. Dereck Lively II missed the Pistons game due to personal reasons, was back and came off the bench in this game against the Chicago Bulls. With Gafford and Lively, especially in a matchup against Chicago where they don't have a lot of front court presence to be able to deal with the size and the activity of athletic bigs in Daniel Gafford and Dereck Lively, one of the things that the Mavericks have in terms of Gafford and Lively now is that they have 2 athletic bigs that not only can run and finish out in transition, but they also can play well in the half court, whether it be in pick and roll situations and being able to finish at the rim with lob attempts from Luka Doncic, with the beautiful passing that he had continuing throughout the course of the game, and as we've seen throughout the course of his career. But now having 2 individuals in Lively and Gafford who athletically can be able to finish in transition, finish in the half court, and put pressure on defenses. And in a matchup against Chicago where they didn't have a lot of size, they could allow both of those guys to play at that kind of style. And what allows the Mavericks to do is they can play a various amount of styles, whether it be in half court, whether they want to get up and down in pace. They can do all these things with 2 guys in Gafford and Lively that really put pressure on you on both ends of the floor. You saw what Daniel Gafford was able to do in this game, had another couple of block shots as well. Again, defending the paint, being able to extend and get out to block some jump shots as well. There's a lot of versatility. My whole point is there's a lot of versatility that Gafford and Lively bring from the big man position, and you saw that in full force against the Chicago Bulls, where I really enjoyed the game plan of making sure that you took out a Chicago Bulls team that was probably going to be tired coming off that 4-game West Coast road trip. As I mentioned, having finished 3-1, but losing in their final game of that road trip against the Los Angeles Clippers. It's hard to come in and play in that first game at home, coming off of a difficult, long West Coast road trip. And the Mavericks recognized that early on in the game and really dictated the pace on how they wanted to play against Chicago. And you saw that time and time again with guys like Gafford and Lively being able to finish in transition, which gives them another added dimension for them to be able to put pressure on opposing teams. Dereck Lively II was spectacular, especially in that first half. You look at the numbers that he was able to put up in the first half for the Mavericks, going with Luka Doncic, who had the 15 points in the first half. Dereck Lively had 16 points, going 8 of 9 from the field. A lot of dunks. That was the theme of the night for the Dallas Mavericks bigs. A lot of dunks. But more importantly, and I just mentioned it, Dereck Lively getting out in transition. Time and time again, you saw Luka Doncic with beautiful outlet passes in transition, hitting guys in stride to be able to finish at the rim. And look, I thought about it as I was watching the game. The only other person that I could think of that has a better outlet pass throughout the course of his career, and Luka Doncic still has a long way to go, but by the time he gets there, he'll probably be the best at it. Kevin Love, if you've watched throughout the course of his career, beautiful outlet passer, a guy that could throw pinpoint passes in transition and was able to do that throughout the course of his career. Luka Doncic, the only other person that I've seen that can throw beautiful, on time, deep passes in transition, and you saw that plenty throughout the course of the game. And what that does is that is an indefensible pass when you're able to get things out in transition, be able to finish with pinpoint passing and accuracy for guys to be able to have easy catching finishes at the rim. It takes a lot out of a defense, especially in transition, when you see a guy just demoralizing you over and over again with beautiful, pinpoint, accurate, deep, on-time passes in transition, and the length of the passes that Luka Doncic is able to throw. You saw that throughout the course of the game, and it was beautiful to watch. And Daniel Gafford and Dereck Lively were the beneficiaries of that throughout the course of the game. Mavericks, of course, were up by 28 to begin that second quarter, allowed the Bulls to kind of get in it, as the Bulls were able to use a 12-4 run at the end of the second quarter to cut the lead to 20. Mavericks in that second quarter went 0 of 10 from 3 and just 8 of 20 from the field. But Dereck Lively was able to help stabilize things as you saw the Mavericks maintain a 20-point lead going into the second half. But the aggressiveness in the paint, good decision-making, one of my favorite plays in the game against the Bulls, where you saw Tim Hardaway Jr. be able to finish a play in transition, making a good decision to not shoot the 3 in transition, but be able to find, of course, Dereck Lively II find Daniel Gafford for what was his 23rd consecutive made field goal. That was another great indicator about how locked in the Mavericks were, that Tim Hardaway Jr. was able to find a Daniel Gafford in transition, not taking the pull-up 3, but making the correct decision to be able to get the pass to Gafford. And, of course, it was an easy bucket at the rim to be able to get things going and continue to keep things going for the Dallas Mavericks. But that was the theme of this game, dominating inside the paint. Daniel Gafford, terrific reading off of Luka Doncic, whether it be in pick and roll and slip situations, being able to get to the basket to finish at the rim with consistency. The Mavericks, what I wanted to see coming into that third quarter was to really take things out against the Chicago Bulls to put themselves in a position where there was no doubt about how the outcome would be going into the fourth quarter, and that's exactly what they did. The Mavericks outscoring the Bulls 36-22 in that third quarter. They started 7 of 10 from the field in the first 4 minutes, 50% from 3, as they were able to increase their lead to 26 at 80-54 with just under 7 minutes left. Luka Doncic would get his 7th consecutive triple-double with his 10th rebound in that third quarter, as the Mavericks were able to shoot 58% from the field, 41% from 3. Doncic stuffing the stat sheet once again, 9 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, as the Mavericks led by 34 at the end of 3. Dereck Lively II getting to a career-high 22 points in the game. And these are the things. We talked about it coming into the season before Dereck Lively really established himself as the starting center for this team that we wanted to see the Mavericks go acquire a veteran center to be able to allow Dereck Lively to slowly come along and then be able to establish himself as the future center of this team. And it's kind of worked out in reverse a little bit. Dereck Lively came in playing extremely well for the Mavericks, was able to establish himself as a force within the middle, even in his rookie year, as he continues to learn to play without fouling, to understand how to play in space on the defensive end. We've seen the rim rolling and the finishing ability at the rim, working the pick and roll with Luka Doncic. We've seen at times Dereck Lively be able to put the ball on the floor a little bit to be able to finish at the rim as well. But we knew it was going to be a work in progress for him to come along throughout the course of the season. And then the Mavericks make the acquisition of Daniel Gafford at the trade deadline. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, Mavericks 5-0 when Daniel Gafford is in the starting lineup, and it's kind of worked in reverse where Gafford has been able to really cement himself as being a force within the middle and now allowing Lively to come off the bench to really be able to provide that energy for that second unit as well. And what you now have is a good problem because you've got confidence in Dereck Lively to be a starter, but you've also got confidence in Daniel Gafford to be a starter as well. And depending on the kind of matchup that you want to utilize against a particular opponent, you can now interchange Gafford and Lively in your starting center in the middle for the Mavericks to work alongside PJ Washington, who was terrific defensively in this game. My man had a defensive rating of around 96 in this game. Derrick Jones Jr. played well defensively as well, as they were able to take out DeMar DeRozan and make things difficult for him throughout the course of the game. Now you're starting to see the combinations that can be put together when this team commits themselves to the defensive end. They held the Chicago Bulls to 92 points in this game. Again, when this team is led by their defense, this team can be really good, but the consistency with that mindset has been lacking throughout the course of this season. We saw during that 7-game win streak, the team was second in the NBA in defensive rating. When they lost 5 of 6, they were dead last in the NBA in defensive rating. So you can tell when their defense is on point, when they're playing with the consistency and the connectivity that they have on the defensive end, this team can win games because we know that they're going to score time in and time out, night in and night out. And now you're starting to see, hopefully, them put together consistently what their identity is on the floor. We know what their identity is offensively, led by Luka and Kyrie. Kyrie, not necessarily great in this game, but didn't necessarily need to be, as Luka Doncic, with his pinpoint passing, was able to allow the bigs of the Mavericks to dominate between Daniel Gafford and, of course, Dereck Lively II. But the formula for the way that the Mavericks played in this game, I thought the game plan, Jason Kidd, was actually the right one based on the personnel that you had. Just to give you some more numbers on what Dereck Lively II was able to do, contributing 16 points off the bench in the first half against Chicago, marking his highest scoring half of the season, matching his highest scoring effort off the bench for an entire game. Of course, he had 16 points in his debut against the San Antonio Spurs way back on October 25th of this season. Luka Doncic, again, spectacular with stuffing the stat sheet. Just to give you an idea of what he did in that first half, with the 15 points, the 8 rebounds, and the 9 assists that he had against Chicago. His only other half with at least 15, 8, and 9 occurred when he produced his first half triple-double against the Utah Jazz earlier on the season when he had 29, 10, and 10 on December the 6th. And it's funny that that's the game that he had that particular stat line, because that was arguably the most dominant win of the season for the Mavericks. And you look at this game, I would say another completely dominant effort and one of the most complete wins of the season for the Mavericks, doing it both on the offensive and defensive end. And that's what you want to see for the Mavericks, putting together the continuity, the complementary, if you want to use the word, complementary play of offense and defense. Good defense turning into good offense, leading to easy buckets in transition. A team in the Mavericks that was able to dominate in points of the paint, scoring 60 points in the paint. They were able to turn Chicago over 13 times, leading to 16 points off of those turnovers as well. The bench scoring 51 points in this game as well. A total team effort that you saw collectively from the Dallas Mavericks that hopefully gives me and you indication now about what they can continue to do to build the momentum. Because for a lot of Mavericks fans at this particular point, They've seen the up and down roller coaster that the Mavericks have put us on throughout the course of the year. We talked about it just a little bit ago, the 7-game win streak that they had, then following that up with losing 5 of 6. Now they've won 3 games in a row. The seesaw up and down nature of this team at times doesn't allow for confidence to think that they can put it together for consistent stretches to give us better ideas about what they can do against the upper echelon teams of the West. We will find that out here over the course of the next 3 games as they get ready to take on the Golden State Warriors. They take on the Denver Nuggets. They take on the Oklahoma City Thunder with a back-to-back with the Golden State Warriors on Wednesday, then traveling to OKC for a Thursday night game at 9 o'clock before they come home on Sunday to take on the reigning NBA champion Denver Nuggets. So we're going to find out a lot, I think, over the next 3 games for the Mavericks on who they really are playing against a team in the Golden State Warriors that doesn't have Stephen Curry right now, that's still fighting for their playoff life as well. But then the games against the Oklahoma City Thunder and against the Denver Nuggets, 2 teams at the very top in the West. In fact, the number 1 and 2 teams in the West in terms of the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets playing sensational basketball right now. Nikola Jokic coming off of a 35 point, 17 rebound, 12 assist night in a win against the Toronto Raptors. We are going to find out, you and I, really how much more consistent this Mavericks team is based off of what they endured in winning 7 games in a row, then having that 5 of 6 losing stretch that they had, and now building that momentum back with winning 3 games in a row here and completing their 2-game road trip at 2-0, and what that means for them going forward for the rest of this season. Again, some more numbers, especially for Dereck Lively and for Daniel Gafford. As I mentioned, Dereck Lively going 11 of 12 from the field, 22 points in the game, had 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals. The Mavericks are now 3-1 this season when Dereck Lively scores at least 20 points. And then the man of the hour, of course, Daniel Gafford, who was able to set an NBA record with making 28 consecutive field goals, the most consecutive field goals since 1996-1997, as he goes a perfect 9 of 9 from the field. And a complete and dominant effort from both Dereck Lively II and Daniel Gafford and what they were able to do in this game. And finally, and I'll make sure this is the final stat that you hear when it comes to Daniel Gafford and Dereck Lively II, with his 22 points and, of course, the 20 points, that Daniel Gafford had, each scoring 20-plus points against the Bulls, going combined 20 or 21 from the field. It marked the first time in Mavericks history that 2 players had scored at least 20 points and combined for at least 95% from the field in the same game. That just gives you an idea of how dominant the Dallas Mavericks bigs were when it came to Dereck Lively II and Daniel Gafford in this game. So a terrific win for them, and a game where the Mavericks led by as many as 37 points. Jaden Hardy had 11 points in mop-up duty in the fourth quarter, as the Mavericks were able to dominate from start to finish and really put the clamps down on Nikola Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan. I mentioned it a little bit just a second ago with Derrick Jones Jr. and, of course, P.J. Washington, the lockdown defense that they played in this game. And that is the formula for this team. Luka and Kyrie being able to dominate offensively and then being able to get the kind of defense from a Derrick Jones Jr., from a P.J. Washington, with dominance in the middle from Daniel Gafford and Dereck Lively II being interchangeable, whether it be in the starting lineup or coming off the bench, and then be able to knock down threes as well. The Mavericks finished the game only with 13 threes, but at the same time, they were able to use a formula that allowed them to dominate in the paint. And that's one thing from Jason Kidd that Mavericks fans have complained about. Can you make adjustments based on the matchups that you have and put together a game plan that allows you to dominate the opponent that you're facing that night with the personnel that you have, with the flexibility of the guys that you now have on this roster? Because one of the things that we lauded about the acquisitions of Daniel Gafford and Dereck Lively II was how much more versatile and how much more flexible in terms of the style of play that you would be able to have in both the first unit and the second unit, and what that could do to put pressure against opponents. The same game plan that the Mavericks deployed against the Chicago Bulls was one thing that I wanted to see when they took on the Philadelphia 76ers a little bit while back, when Tyrese Maxey and the Sixers came into the American Airlines Center and beat them. The Sixers didn't have a lot of size, of course, with no Joel Embiid, but you had Daniel Gafford and Dereck Lively II. Why not try to dominate in the paint and not allow the Philadelphia 76ers to be able to dictate how they played you in your own building? They were able to use that formula, did the Mavericks, dominating in the middle with Daniel Gafford and Dereck Lively to really punish the Chicago Bulls time and time again. And you saw it, whether it be in transition, whether it be in the half court. The Mavericks did what they wanted to do, however they wanted to do it throughout the course of the game. And what can you say about Luka Doncic and the spectacular effort that he had? The Mavericks were trying to get him to that 30 points in the fourth quarter, wasn't able to knock down a three-pointer in order to get to that 30-point triple-double mark. But at the same time, the win is the most important for this team, and they have to continue to stack wins going forward. We touched on it a little bit earlier, where things are in terms of the Western Conference standings. The Mavericks sitting there at 8th behind the Sacramento Kings. They own the tiebreaker over the Phoenix Suns. So if they're able to finish ahead of them, they would be able, or finish in a tie with them, they would own the tiebreaker and be able to get the better playoff positioning in the Western Conference. But now with a difficult 3 games with Golden State on Wednesday as part of the first night of a back-to-back when they take on the Oklahoma City Thunder on Thursday night, that game tipping off at 9 o'clock in OKC, and then coming home on Sunday to take on the Denver Nuggets. These 3 games are going to tell us quite a bit about Jason Kidd and his team, and if the mindset that they've developed over the last 3 games with leading with defense, gaining dominant efforts in the middle, especially in the game against Chicago from Gafford and Lively. Obviously, Luka continuing to do what he's doing from an offensive perspective. You saw he had a nice little steal in the game as well. Luka doing everything that he can to put this team in position. Now it's about his teammates continuing to come along to be able to play consistently night in and night out. And it was a lot of fun to watch this team really dominate. And a number that stuck out to me in this game as well, that hopefully you'll continue to see as well, sharing the basketball. Mavericks had 33 assists on 51 made field goals. And you saw a lot of that, of course, from Luka Doncic and what he was able to do. But good decision-making with the basketball. Tim Hardaway Jr. pointed out the example a little bit earlier. Those are the things. Those are winning basketball plays. Being able to make sure that you're making the correct play, not taking a selfish shot in transition, but finding your teammates for easy buckets to really continue to put pressure on your opponents. I thought the Mavericks played a terrific game, and hopefully now show us that what they have been doing the last 3 games is a sign of things to come moving forward for the rest of the year, because it does not get any easier as they finish the final 17 games of the season, as they make a push to try and climb up the Western Conference standings. But the Mavericks dominate the Chicago Bulls on the road at United Center in Chicago, a 35-point beat them down in the Midwest, as the Mavericks got the 127-92 win, moving to 37-28 on the season, now 18-13 away from the American Airlines Center, beating a good Chicago Bulls team that had came in playing pretty well, but you could tell early on the energy and the shot making was just simply not there for Chicago, and the Mavericks took advantage of that, pushing the pace, getting up and down in transition, and really making things difficult for Chicago throughout the course of the night. So a big win, as the Mavericks now have won 3 straight games. We'll look to continue that momentum when they welcome in the Golden State Warriors on Wednesday. Should be a lot of fun. It's always a good time when the Golden State Warriors come to the American Airlines Center, and we'll see if the Mavericks can continue pushing things forward. They've got to stack wins. This is the name of the game. 17 games left. Win, 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 and do as much of it as you can, and hopefully you get some help in front of you when it comes to the Sacramento Kings, and the Mavericks are able to control some of that on their own with a couple of games against Sacramento, and then we'll see how things continue to fall as far as that play-in situation is concerned. But the vibes are good right now, at least for the time being, as the Mavericks find a way to get their 3rd straight win, their 2nd consecutive road win after an 18-point win against Detroit, and then a 35-point annihilation of the Chicago Bulls in the Windy City. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura. Again, appreciate you joining me here for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the Inside the Mavs podcast, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. I am your Mavericks pre- and post-game host for every Mavericks radio broadcast for pre- and post-game duties as well. And, of course, hosting this podcast on Inside the Mavs. You can download it on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it. And you can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports and subscribe to my channel if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. Again, appreciate you joining me here for Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. I'll talk to you later. Have a great day.